Right now on Matter of Fact, from Robert Mueller and Russia to Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, where do these two investigations collide?
This is where things could get problematic for the president.
And will President Trump's own words help the prosecution?
It may have made their job a little bit easier.
Plus, is capitalism the key to winning over Republican climate change deniers?
We could make a lot of money, create a lot of wealth, create a lot of jobs. What's there not to like?
This former Republican congressman says getting back to conservative basics could help save the environment. And Fortnite fever. The new video game has become an obsession for a lot of teens. So what's a parent to do?
I want parents to play with the kids.
You've killed the coolness out of the game altogether. I'm Soledad O'Brien. Welcome to Matter of Fact. When the FBI raided the office, the home, and the hotel room of Michael Cohen, President Trump's personal attorney, back on April 9th, President Trump said it was an attack on the country. And then he tweeted it marked the end of attorney-client privilege. But Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal called the raid one of the most significant and seismic events in the Trump-Russia investigation. So how exactly do the two cases connect? Peter Zeidenberg is a former federal prosecutor who worked with the special counsel, Robert Mueller, at the Justice Department. Nice to have you back, as always, to walk us through
Happy to be here.
So much that's been going on. Okay, so let's talk about these two investigations. We have the Mueller investigation, which is focusing on Russia. Now we have the raid on Michael Cohen. What exactly, how are they separate, and where could they potentially connect?
Well, I'm going to caveat it by saying we don't really know, because properly it's an investigation and it is kept secret, and Mueller's team hasn't been leaking. So it appears that Mueller uncovered some information about Cohen, and he took it to Rod Rosenstein, who told him send it to the Southern District of New York. Strategically, it also has advantages, because dividing up jurisdictions makes it much harder for President Trump to try and quash any of these investigations.
So that investigation that's going into Cohen seems to be focusing, at least from what we know, is not Russia. It's sort of personal business dealings of Michael Cohen, but because he's obviously a fixer in a lot of ways for President Trump, this is where things could get problematic for the president.
Exactly. So it's sort of standard operating procedure that when you are doing a big investigation and have a target, that prosecutors will look at potential witnesses around that target to flip. I mean, it's done all the time in violent crime and mafia cases.
The president said or tweeted, attorney-client privilege is dead. So walk us through specifically what attorney-client privilege is, because I think there's a sense of anybody talking to any attorney at any time, that's covered by attorney-client privilege.
Attorney-client privilege is actually fairly narrow. It applies to an attorney and his client about legal advice. And if it's not legal advice, if you're not consulting about legal advice, that's not covered. And certainly if you're discussing a possible criminal activity, that is not covered. That's the crime fraud exception. And the other thing is, a week or so ago, the president was asked about the Stormy Daniels matter, and he said, I don't know anything about that. You'll have to talk to Michael Cohen. So it may have made their job, the prosecutor's job, a little bit easier.
How so? Well,
when they went to the judge, they could go to say, we don't think there's going to be privileged material here, because he's not representing him on that matter, because the president didn't know anything about it. And they could actually refer to that conversation or that statement in their papers.
So there is, and has been for a while now, rumor that Rosenstein will be fired. How does that complicate this case, if in fact that does happen?
Well, it doesn't complicate the Cohen case, because, again, that's now off and running in the Southern District of New York. The firing of Rod Rosenstein, I think the assumption is it's not going to be a standalone. The reason to fire Rod Rosenstein is to get to Mueller.
There's been an effort to have legislation that would protect Bob Mueller and his work basically. The Senate Majority Leader has said no, he has no intention, at least at this moment, of bringing that to the floor. Would you support that legislation?
I think it's urgently needed. You know, I'm not under any illusions, as are most, that the president would sign it if it came to his desk. But the fact that if there were a significant number of Republicans, House members, senators, who said, yes, we agree.
So symbolically.
I think it would at least send an important message that this is a tripwire here. Don't touch it. Stay away from this and let him do his job.
Peter Zeidenberg, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate it.
Happy to.
Next, a frenzy over Fortnite. Why parents are fans of this popular game. Plus, an epiphany at the South Pole cost a congressman his job.
You stop being skeptical about climate change?
Climate change is real. Let's do something about it.
How this Republican plans using greenbacks to convince his party to go green. And a history lesson. What's the difference between a truce and a treaty? Here's a hint.
It takes a treaty to formally end a war.
What does this have to do with a possible peace deal between North and South Korea?
On this Earth Day weekend, it appears the partisan gap over climate change is growing wider. According to a recent Gallup poll, 69% of Republicans say climate change is exaggerated, compared to just 4% of Democrats. That split can create challenges for Republicans who believe that global warming is real and poses a serious threat. And 97% of climate scientists agree. Former South Carolina Congressman Republican Bob Inglis represented what he called the reddest district in the reddest state. He went from climate change denier to a believer after a visit to the South Pole, and he says that shift cost him his seat in Congress. But now he's on a mission to win over conservative skeptics. Bob Inglis joins us from Greenville, South Carolina. So nice to have you, sir. Thank you for being with us. Walk me through, if you will, how that exactly happened. How did you lose your seat after you stopped being skeptical about climate change?
Well, I committed various heresies against the Republican orthodoxy at the time, I suppose. But the most enduring was just saying climate change is real. Let's do something about it. But that came from a conviction of, my son talking to me about it, and then a trip to Antarctica, and then another trip to the Great Barrier Reef with the Science Committee, seeing the evidence all along the way, but mostly just finding a solution that could work. And that's, of course, what we've got to show conservatives, we believe.
The data around climate change, I mean, there's lots of sort of solid, factual data points, and yet a lot of the conflict seems to come because it's become a political and sort of values conversation versus a data conversation, right?
Right, and a lot of that is because conservatives haven't heard a solution that fits with their values yet. What they've heard is that a bigger government is going to regulate our very breath, and that the UN's going to be involved, and the Wall Street traders are going to get involved. And if that didn't work, then we're going to have a regulatory answer called the Clean Power Plan. None of that's attractive to conservatives.
I remember when we first started talking about climate change decades ago, it was always kind of around like the polar bears. It wasn't framed as an economic conversation. And I think that's been problematic as well.
Right, and that's certainly the case. And it's also been something that's been a long way away, right? And thankfully, here recently, for example, we brought those estimates of impacts closer in. We're experiencing them now. But for example, a foot of sea level rise in Hampton Roads, Virginia by 2050. That's within the lifetime of some of the people listening to us right now. And so a foot of sea level rise. That's better than talking about 2100, because there are a lot of us that won't be here at that point. It's also true that we got to get the whole world in on this, and that's something that I think conservatives have been especially sensitive to, is that if you can't get China and India in on this thing, it is worthless to proceed alone. Reason is you cause people to pick up and move their plants from here to there. When they get there, they're going to emit more than they were emitting here. So you actually lose jobs, plus you lose to the race, and we think it's a race to reduce emissions. And so how to get China and India in on this thing and the rest of the world is crucial. So we would put a price on carbon dioxide through a carbon tax, cut taxes elsewhere, and then apply that tax on imports at the border.
Do you get a sense that the administration currently wants to embrace this in any way, shape, or form, and don't you need that?
Well, you know, it's a challenge for us, obviously. Scott Pruitt, I think if he's listening, probably doesn't agree with what I'm saying, but somewhere deep down he probably does. It's just that right now he's playing to a crowd that you basically told them what the snake oil salesman has said, which is we're going to bring your coal jobs back and frack on natural gas. Eventually, the facts come and overtake you. And so we think that that's going to happen, and that people that have been sold snake oil are going to basically ride the snake oil salesman out of town on a rail.
Do you see a difference in how young people, young Republicans, look at this issue?
Oh, absolutely. The young conservatives say, hallelujah, somebody talking about my future. But unfortunately, their parents and grandparents are harder to come around. But we believe the kids can help us get to them, just like my son and daughters got to me.
Bob Inglis is a former congressman in South Carolina today. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Great to be with you.
When we come back, have you ever heard of Fortnite?
It's a game that's very compelling.
Your kids probably have. Why a psychologist says you should play the game with your family. Plus, changing the rules. How Barbara Bush helped reshape the role of First Lady.
Fortnite is the latest video game to become a teen obsession. Even though the mobile version was just released on March 15th, it's already become more popular than Candy Crush and Pokemon Go. And they were really, really popular. Fortnite rakes in nearly $2 million a day, which is remarkable because the game is free to play. Players make in-app purchases for things like costumes or other cosmetic changes to their characters. So if you've never played Fortnite, here are the basics. You can play it on your computer or gaming consoles like PlayStation and Xbox, or on your smartphone. And it takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. Players work together in teams to kill zombies, find supplies, build shelters. And you win by being the last player alive. Because the game has a chat feature, players can communicate with each other to strategize in real time. And it's that collaboration, along with less graphic violence, that has won Fortnite support from lots of parents. Ed Spector is a psychologist who helps teens manage their technology. It's nice to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's go through the good and the bad. And I'll start with the bad, because I have two boys who are 13 who both love and are kind of obsessed with Fortnite. The bad is they're addicted to it. The bad is that they're obsessed with it. The bad is that they choose to play Fortnite and not go do their homework in many cases.
I mean, the thing to remember is that Fortnite is just a game. It's a game that's very compelling, it's fun, and it's social. So what your sons are doing is they're wanting to hang out with their friends when they should be doing their homework.
What's the good? I mean, are there any big upsides that go beyond just you get really, really good at Fortnite and can win?
What I like about this particular game is the game itself isn't what's really compelling. It's all the social interaction, that they've actually made friends, real-life friends, because they've had something in common to talk about. One of the things that most teenagers are dealing with is that sort of awkwardness of how do you fill the silence. And now they're able to have this common topic that almost everyone knows about, so you have friendships forming.
Earlier I said my sons are addicted, and I was being a little facetious because I don't think that they're addicted. I do think they're kind of obsessed. What is the line between this kid is obsessed with the game, boy, this kid won't stop playing the game, to you actually have a diagnosable severe problem?
Right. Well,
what are those lines?
Yeah, so the first category, which is the one most people are going to encounter, is new fun thing comes into the house, kids really obsessed about it, having a great time with it. And because he or she is immature or young or doesn't have good executive functioning skills, then there are people who have diagnosable problems where it might come with a vulnerability to compulsively using technology. So if your kid is depressed, if your kid has social anxiety, if they have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, if they have obsessive compulsive disorder or autism, then you're going to have to really lean in and provide a lot of support if you think it's going to go well. And then there's this other third category, which is the one that the World Health Organization has just made a diagnosis for, addressing these people who play 10, 12 hours a day, who stop eating and drinking properly, who don't sleep, who might die because they're neglecting their basic human needs.
For people who are in that first category,
Yes.
which I think is the bulk of parents who are
Right.
trying to figure out how to navigate their teenagers becoming more responsible, giving them some freedom, and also making sure their lives aren't overrun by technology and games.
I want parents to play with the kids, because if you play with your kids, you have a good time laughing and having fun playing Fortnite with your kids. You're that cool parent who's done that.
Or you've killed the coolness out of the game altogether.
Well, yeah.
That's highly likely.
Little reality check there too, but then also you're able to then talk about the things you need to as a parent in terms of like, wow, this thing could really get out of control. It's super fun, but you also have to do your homework. And how do you manage that? Do you want to have a timer? Do you want to figure out, like, is this something you would maybe do only after your homework's done?
And if you can beat your kid in Fortnite, then problem solved.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Ed Spector, so nice to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Coming up next, high-stakes talks. What role would the United States play in a peace deal between North and South Korea?
President Trump has said both sides have his blessing to move forward on a peace treaty.
But there can't be any legal deal without one other country coming to the table. Do you know which one it is?
And now to our weekly feature we like to call We're Paying Attention, Even If You're Too Busy. For the first time since 2007, the leaders of South and North Korea are set to hold direct talks. That's on April 27th. And a peace deal is reportedly on the table. But there are a few complications. The Korean War never officially ended. It takes a treaty to formally end a war, but the Korean conflict ended in 1953 with an armistice, which is a temporary truce. China, the United States, and North Korea signed the truce, but South Korea did not. So any treaty would require approval from all four countries. Another complication is that only countries with established diplomatic relations can sign a treaty. So the United States would first have to recognize North Korea as a sovereign state. President Trump has said both sides have his blessing to move forward on a peace treaty.
It would be a tremendous thing for North Korea and a tremendous thing for the world.
The president's scheduled to hold historic talks with Kim Jong-un soon, and it'll be the first time a sitting U.S. president has had direct talks with North Korea. The CIA Director Mike Pompeo, who is also currently the nominee for Secretary of State, met with Kim Jong-un earlier this month.
When we return, moving the role of First Lady into the modern age.
Traditionally, the First Lady's main role has been White House hostess.
Which First Lady rewrote that job description?
Tributes poured in this week for Barbara Bush. The former First Lady died on Tuesday at the age of 92. Mrs. Bush understood the First Lady could wield tremendous power by using her public role to advocate for social issues. This famous image from 1989 shows her hugging an infant with AIDS. Many people don't know Mrs. Bush was a trustee at the Morehouse School of Medicine. The school's president emeritus, Dr. Louis Sullivan, says it was the First Lady who encouraged her husband, President George H.W. Bush, to appoint him Secretary of Health and Human Services. Traditionally, the First Lady's main role has been White House hostess, organizing all social events like state dinners. But in the 20th century, the role evolved. Eleanor Roosevelt was considered the first modern First Lady. She was deeply involved in the Democratic Party before her husband, Franklin, was elected president, and was a champion of social justice. Jackie Kennedy is still remembered as a fashion and style icon who brought glamour to the White House. Nancy Reagan avoided getting involved directly in policymaking, but she was a powerful ally of President Reagan and considered herself his personal protector. And Hillary Clinton has the unique position of being the only First Lady to ever hold public office when she was elected to the U.S. Senate in the year 2000. Barbara Bush also holds a record. She and President Bush celebrated their 73rd wedding anniversary in January, making them the longest married couple in presidential history. And that is a matter of fact. I'm Soledad O'Brien, and we will see you back here next week.